In the early 1970s, a single-minded revolutionary lay concealed in the Cambodian jungle. As American bombs exploded around him, he remained obsessed with his secret plan to destroy his own culture in the name of utopia. In building his perfect society, his regime wreaked chaos. 2 million people died, nearly 1 in every 4 Cambodians. Throughout his life, Pol Pot deliberately obscured his past and disguised his motives.
He was full of ambition, but in a very quiet way. He kept his ambition hidden in his own heart and never spoke to anyone about it.
Pol Pot's real name was Saloth Sar. He was born around 1925, the second son of a prosperous landowner in central Cambodia. His family was rooted in the land. This tomb holds the ashes of his ancestors, and his family still lives in the tiny village of Prestabad. Here, along the Stong Sen River, Pol Pot spent a happy childhood, together with his 8 brothers and sisters. Even then, he had the qualities that would serve him well in the years to come. A gentle demeanor that masked a calculating mind.
There was no one in the family who knew his thought. He studied hard, but as for his intention, we just didn't know.
When he was just 9, Pol Pot's world changed forever. To further his education, his parents sent him to Phnom Penh, the capital. There, his cousin was a dancer in the Royal Ballet, and through her, he was able to see palace life up close. He saw a royal family that was a shadow of its former greatness, corrupt and a puppet of its French colonial rulers. In the 12th century, Cambodia's king had been revered as a god, presiding over the massive temples of Angkor Wat, still the largest religious sites in the world. At school, Pol Pot learned about Cambodia's proud past and how its ancient civilization had been destroyed by foreign invaders. Cambodia's decline would later haunt Pol Pot, and he would one day vow to restore his nation to its former glory. That would be a huge task, for in the 1930s, Cambodia was a tiny part of the French Empire, and its king had little real power.
Think of living under this kind of strain. You're born in a country that is much smaller than its neighbors. You're born in a country that is terrified it's going to be taken over. Historically, it has that problem. You're born in a country where the pervading culture is not necessarily your own. That's the culture of power. It's basically French. And Pol Pot had all of that.
Like a lot of well-connected Cambodians, Pol Pot spent a year as a Buddhist novice, studying the religion that is a bedrock of Cambodian society. His school, however, was French, and Catholic nuns taught him to read and write. The tensions between Cambodian and European culture would shape the rest of his life. In 1941, when Pol Pot was 16, France no longer tried to hide its disregard for Cambodia, installing the pliable 17-year-old Prince Norodom Sihanouk on the throne. He would prove to be a decisive force in Pol Pot's life. Around the same time, Pol Pot enrolled at Cambodia's top high school, named after the new king. Here, he mixed with the nation's brightest young minds, who, like him, were opposed to both the French and the monarchy. Pol Pot soon became close friends with other young idealists, like Ieng Sary. In 1949, these students became the first Cambodians ever to study abroad, and were sent to Paris, the seat of colonial power. At 24, Pol Pot arrived in Paris just as international communism was at its peak. The city was buzzing with talk of revolution. Here on the left bank, Pol Pot and his friends debated politics in their shabby flats. They were looking for an ideology that would free Cambodia from French colonialism, and as they talked, they came to believe that the answer was communism.
We learned the history of the Communist Party, but in reality, we spoke more of national liberation.
In Paris, he joined the colonial wing of the French Communist Party. Again, there's another confusion. He's not really allowed to be a communist. He's allowed to be a colonial communist. Those stresses and those strains you pay a price for.
Working in his small flat above this cafe, Pol Pot began developing his own political philosophy, a radical blend of communism and nationalism. In 1952, 1 year after becoming a communist, he was ready to speak out. Writing in a student magazine, Pol Pot launched a scathing attack on Cambodia's monarchy.
Cambodian people are kept as slaves, made to work night and day to feed the king and his entourage. Monarchy is a malodorous running sore that just people must eliminate.
As Pol Pot wrote, a war in Vietnam gave him a revolution to fight for. Vietnam was also a French colony, but communists there were strong enough to wage a war of independence. Pol Pot returned from France in 1953 and joined the Vietnamese guerrillas just as they were on the verge of victory. In peace talks, France agreed to give up its colonies in Southeast Asia. But in the deal, Vietnam's communists sold Cambodia out.
Pol Pot came to fear the Vietnamese. We did not trust the Vietnamese communists because we thought one day they would swallow us.
Pol Pot felt betrayed. The treaty gave Cambodian independence, but the monarchy he hated would remain firmly in place. Even worse, Sihanouk took all the credit. A decade earlier, the prince had been reviled as a French puppet. Now he was hailed as the father of the nation, and Pol Pot's revolution seemed to be slipping away.
We could see nothing new in our lives. There was no democracy. That was being crushed by Sihanouk.
Rather than give up, Pol Pot took his revolution underground and began leading a double life. In 1956, his affable personality landed him a job as a teacher at a respectable high school in Phnom Penh.
As a history professor, he expressed himself very clearly. The students liked him a lot.
At night, Pol Pot's real work began. Meeting here, in run-down safe houses across from Phnom Penh's railway station, he and his friends secretly recruited the first cells of Cambodia's Communist Party.
We went from house to house, especially to poor people. In secret meetings, we met the workers to discuss the unfairness in our society.
It was a dangerous game, and as they moved around the city, the communists became obsessed with secrecy.
We did not speak about a communist revolution. To disguise our actions, we were called Angka, the organization.
In 1962, the secret organization showed Pol Pot as its leader. His code name was Brother Number One. He would soon turn the party into one of the most ruthless the world has ever seen. At 38, Pol Pot was a master of deception. He was still a respected teacher, yet underneath he was a dedicated revolutionary, plotting to overthrow the monarch. In 1963, he talked openly for one of the few times in his life. He called his followers to his classroom and gave a mesmerizing speech, attacking the very foundations of Cambodian society.
For everyone, once you heard Pol Pot speak, you completely believed him. We could win with that conviction.
Pol Pot hoped that his message would inspire a communist revolution in the slums of Phnom Penh. But his dreams were stifled when King Sihanouk began to crack down on his enemies. Pol Pot was afraid the secret Communist Party would be discovered and ordered his followers to leave the city.
Everyone was in agreement that we must leave. Otherwise, King Sihanouk, as leader of the country, would arrest us all.
As he fled, Pol Pot must have wondered what lay ahead and whether he would ever see Phnom Penh again. He disappeared to a place where no one would find him, not even his family.
We didn't know where he's gone. He just disappeared. We didn't know where to look.
Pol Pot came here, to the remote jungle on the Vietnamese border. Living among the hill tribes, he completely changed his approach to revolution. He came to believe that simple village life was communism in its purest form, and began to convert the tribesmen into revolutionaries.
We found there people who in fact were the perfect revolutionaries. They didn't ask him why to do something, they were ready to work with him. They became kind of a malleable force to whom he could preach this new way of doing things and find them to be willing and enthusiastic followers.
World events would give Pol Pot added momentum. By the mid-1960s, America had replaced France as the main Western power in Southeast Asia and was now at war in Vietnam. Prince Sihanouk allowed the North Vietnamese communists to establish bases just inside Cambodia. This gave Pol Pot a golden opportunity. His hideout was now right on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and the North Vietnamese quickly took him under their wing. He was brought to Hanoi, and then, in a formative trip, Pol Pot went into Beijing at the height of Mao's Cultural Revolution.
The middle